and welcome again to another fabulous episode here with myself and our guest joining us today. His name is Johnathon Clark. Welcome, Johnathon.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you for asking. So let me just tell the listeners a little bit about you, Johnathon. So Johnathon is the director and Facebook advertising specialist at Active 8 Social. Oh, I've got to put my glasses on. My eyes have been a bit tired of late. So here we go. So with a degree in marketing and a passion to help business owners leverage their time, money, and effort to get great results, Johnathon has taken service-based businesses from $500 click per lead to $12 in just 1 week. So that is a really huge accomplishment there, Johnathon. I'm going to ask you to just give our listeners a little bit more of a background and context to who you are. So if you want to tell them your story, go for it.
Perfect. As you said, mentioned before, my name is Johnathon Clark. A bit about myself. Ultimately, the reason why I got into advertising and marketing in the first place is it goes back. I've got to bring it back home. So my dad was in the building industry, and he started up a company, a website, and it sort of started from there when I was a lot younger. And I built him a website, and at that point, I was just like, okay, now what? Like, people are just going to click onto this website. They're just going to hear of this website out of nowhere. And ever since then, I've been fascinated with like what grabs people's attention, how can I maintain their attention, and then how can I convert them towards taking action. And it all started from that very simple place back at home. And since then, been working with a lot of service-based businesses, bringing them in lead generation, and also now we're really focusing and homing down in on the e-commerce side of things, specifically around the health and beauty industry.
Interesting. There are certainly a lot of various different types of entrepreneurs that are listening to this podcast, and everyone does their various different types of things. And I do know that there is a lot of service-based people now starting to change and morph their business, and also to bring about products as well as with services in their business. So I'm really going to have to ask you quite a few questions. Our topic today, listeners, we're talking about the 5 mistakes business owners make when running Facebook ads. So really, like I said, with the dynamics and the variousness with what the listeners are doing in their businesses, a lot of people tend to look at services and products being separate. I tend to look at them as being the same thing. And I think that this year has enabled people to create the two. So then tell us, what would be those, let's explore those 5 mistakes that little bit more, seeing that you're the specialist with Facebook ads and how that's going to help benefit us, whether we're services or whether we're e-commerce.
Yeah, so these 5 typical mistakes that when I do an audit for companies before bringing them on, because I need to first qualify whether or not we can help them or not, and it will be a good fit. I often come across most of these, if not all the time, all 5 of these mistakes. And the first 2 are very basic marketing and advertising principles. And then the last 3 are specifically around the Facebook aspect of things. So the first one is not being specific around your target audience. Now, what that basically means is you need to understand intimately who your consumer is. So that's the age, the gender, the demographics, their interests, where they hang out and things like that. So for argument's sake, let's take one of my clients who is trying to focus on a weight loss supplement, right? I'll just give you an example of how specific, and I could even go even more specific, but just as an example. So we're looking for 35 to 45-year-old women who live in Sydney CBD, are overweight, have interest in diets and high intensity workouts. So the more specific you can be about an audience, the easier it is to, well, one, you can also target them appropriately on Facebook, but the easier it is to speak to them specifically. Now, the reason why this is important is because if you talk to everyone, you talk to no one. Whereas if you talk to someone specifically, you're talking to them and you'll be able to be relatable and have that conversation with that potential consumer. So if you're, for argument's sake, you are a removalist company or something like that, if you are trying to just target everyone in, let's say Melbourne, because I'm from Melbourne, if you're trying to target everyone in Melbourne holistically, yeah, we're a premium service removalist company, choose us. Well, you're not really talking to anyone specifically. What you need to do is break down your target audience into preferably at least 3 different target audiences. So that could be an age range from like 18 through to 25, 25 to 35, 35 to 45, as an example. And you can have, if you're setting yourself up as a premium type of service, then you want to be targeting people who live in a premium type of suburb. Just as an example, somewhere in Toorak, that's multi-million dollar homes. Those types of people are going to want to pay a premium price for a premium service and have a done for you service, as opposed to if you were to go far down south or like outer rural areas where people might not have access to millions of dollars, and they might be wanting a cheaper service. So if you're targeting holistically all of Melbourne, you're not talking to anyone specific. So that's the first mistake, is being specific on who your target audience is.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people, when I've talked to people, they find it a little bit difficult to target it when they're presenting themselves on the internet. So when you're saying the targeting, you're talking about the demographics with the business, with the advertising and the selections and that. How about with, say, the wordings that they use, and how can they make sure that their message really is a lot more focused and a standout?
So that comes into more mistake number 2, which is your messaging sucks and your offer is even worse. Is what I'd like to call it. Ultimately, if you, as I mentioned before, if you've segmented your audience, then you will have specific things to talk about in that type of target audience. So if I gave you the example before of some 35 to 45-year-old women who live in Sydney CBD who are overweight, interested in diet and high intensity workouts, I can have a very specific tailored message to that person based on who they are, being a woman living in Sydney, and have an interest in diets and high intensity workouts, and then start talking about their pain points. So when you've got that target audience specified, then you can start your messaging. And ultimately, with the messaging, what a lot of people get wrong is the 3 different stages. So you have your top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel. So you have your cold audience, your cold audience, your warm audience, and your hot audience. Now, with your top of funnel, which is your cold audience, you want to be talking about the problem. A lot of people, in fact, probably almost every single person I ever audited, always skip the problem and go straight to the solution. We are the solution, right? Everyone's like, oh, look at me. We're amazing. We're the solution to your problems. But a lot of people don't even know they have a problem. Like, for argument's sake, if you talk, I don't know, if you just take anything out of context, if someone was potentially looking to go to the gym, for argument's sake, and lose a bit of weight, they might not see themselves as needing to do that until you sort of point it out a little bit. For argument's sake, I didn't really realize that I was started to eat a little bit of snacks here, there, and everywhere throughout the day. And then my girlfriend pointed out to me the other day, she's like, oh, you're starting to get a little bit of a belly. I'm like, oh, okay. If you point out the problem, then they know that there is a problem, and then they need to seek the solution. So when you only try to message a solution, you're only really talking to a smaller portion size of an audience than the entire portion size, which at the top of funnel, you want to be talking about the problem. And then you can start going into a bit of a storytelling about how if you resonate with this, and this key points or pain points, then you're probably familiar with this, this, and this. And then if someone reads that and they're like, oh shit, yeah, that's like me. I've got those issues. And then, yeah, I've got those symptoms as well. Then you're going to grab their attention. You're going to be more relatable, and you're also going to broaden the portion size of your audience first and foremost. So that was primarily like your top of funnel, which is when you talk about the problem. The middle of funnel is when you've got a warm audience, people who have heard of you, referrals, people have gone to your socials, or they've clicked on your ads, or they've clicked in some way, shape, or form. They're familiar with you. I tend to class this as not people who have been to your website, although you could technically do that. This is more around solution-based messaging. So if someone's interacted with your ads, someone's interacted with you in some way, shape, or form, then they're likely to be familiar with their problem and how you help problems. And then all you got to do is talk about the solution. How can you help that person? And then moving down to the bottom of the funnel being the more the hot audience. So people who've gone to your website, people who have opted in, but then halfway opted into like a lead generation for argument's sake, or people who have gone to your website, clicked add to cart if it's an e-commerce store, and then left. That's what we consider a hot audience. And then you just got to retarget those people with the product. So it's problem, solution, product. They're the three key messaging points, starting from the top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel. And that's where a lot of people get it wrong, is that they'll either talk about the solution, but people don't really know they have a problem, or they'll just talk about the product. And if someone doesn't even know they have a problem, why would they buy your product? Like if you're offering a service to someone and they don't know that they need that service, why would they bother looking into you and figuring out why they need your product? You need to basically articulate that in a way that it's smooth and yeah. Ultimately,
without being rude, I suppose.
There's a very fine, delicate line between being like pointing out someone's problem and being like, hey, if you've noticed this symptom, this symptom, this symptom, you're probably familiar with this story. And then if you try telling a story like relatable type of sense, and you'll be able to get away with those types of messaging, especially with like on Facebook getting approved ads. If you flat out point out someone's problem, like, are you overweight? That's pretty much a guaranteed way to get your ad account banned. Whereas if you say something like, oh, have you noticed that since working from home, times have been stressful, started snacking more often, and then before you know it, you've wondered, where did my six pack go, right? If you tell it in a more relatable, symptomized storytelling aspect, then that's how you can word it around that sort of thing. But also, while we're on the topic of talking about like the wording, another symptom around the messaging, another problem that I see with people with the messaging is that we go to school and we're talking a very academic way to elaborate on things, talk about things in great detail, to use filler words, which is a pet peeve of mine. So using words like as soon as. You don't need to use filler words in your messaging. It's terrible copywriting. So in terms of like on an academic level, you're taught to use big words, references, and try to sound really big brained essentially. What a lot of business owners forget is that most of their consumer are just everyday people. So by using big articulated words, very often you're going to get a consumer who starts reading your ad and then they'll be like, wait, what? And as soon as you get that happen, you've lost their attention. Boom. Like they'll just keep scrolling. As soon as there's resistance on any level, shape, or form, they'll stop scrolling unless they're super interested, which is considerably unlikely. So a general rule of thumb is to always have a comprehension level for like your wording and your messaging on an 8th grade level. Mm. You will reach just about every single person out there, no matter what, if you have a comprehension level of an 8th grade. Mm. So that encompasses everyone. So everyone who like never went to university will be able to read and write at an 8th grade level. And those are the types of people that could be your everyday consumer, right? As soon as you start using big articulated words, people go, I don't understand, and then they keep scrolling. can't remember where I read this, but I did read a article about Donald Trump. So, and like now ex president. The reason why a lot of people ended up liking him, well, besides the fact that he wasn't very PC, was his comprehension level on with his wording was at a year 3 level, like a grade 3 level at primary school. That is the comprehension level of his wording choice, his language. And it's because it is so simple, so easy to understand, that there's no level of hesitation, or like you read something, you're like, oh, what's that? The whole time it's smooth, the whole time you understand everything. It's just, that's what your consumer wants. They don't want a level of resistance in your messaging where you're reading, oh, I don't understand that, move on. Whereas if it's completely smooth and you understand it from point A to point B, then you're going to grab someone's attention and maintain their attention as long as it's relevant and specific to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I was thinking of two sorts of questions to pose to you. So, I mean, obviously it still would depend on who your target market is. So if your target market is people who do use bigger comprehensive words and it's very specific, I suppose you would be able to get away with that.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Yeah.
So naturally, if your consumer is a highly academic type of person, then obviously use a bit of common sense here. That's the type of wording that you need to use. But if you're a general, like if you just offer a holistic service to anyone, you're not too phased on like who that person is, or you're selling a product to the general public, that's when you need to consider the comprehension level to be at an 8th grade level.
However, when you're saying no to anyone or to the general public, it's still within a particular segment of demographics, because you want to be targeted. Is that correct?
Yeah. So that relates back to point 1, where you have a specified segment audience. You want to be able to talk to that person specifically. Yeah.
Yep. Beautiful. Nice. It's very interesting. I still sort of wanted to ask you some more questions though around the whole, if the message sucks and their offer or hook is if it doesn't work. So we've heard quite a lot around the message and the wordings and the phrasings. And then there's message as in the message you're trying to get across. So I wanted to ask you about that. And then of course, that hook or that offer.
Yeah. So in regards to that, I think the best way to talk about that is the consumer decision-making process. Understanding where that potential consumer is at in making that decision is going to massively help you when you are creating your ad. So if someone's never heard of you before, that's when we go back to like the problem. Let's talk about the problem in a certain storytelling way. And then you introduce like the solution throughout that. But you need to mainly point out a bit of a problem. And then if someone's familiar with you, they've been to your website and they're not sure, then obviously a retargeting ad is going to be very different. They understand that they have a problem. They were seeking some sort of solution. Now you need to offer some kind of de-risk value. And that's where a lot of the offer or hooks come into play, is if you can de-risk anything, people are more likely to take action. So what that would basically mean is if you're an e-commerce store and you're not offering free shipping at a certain threshold, you're already behind the game. Like that's just one aspect that you're offering, you're de-risking things and you're also offering more value. In the e-commerce space also, if you have a product that's over $100 and you don't offer something like Afterpay, you're behind already. So something as simple as that in terms of like your offer could be like anyone who purchases anything for $150 or more gets free shipping. And as a bonus, what we can do is we can split that payment up into 4 fortnightly payments using Afterpay. So you're trying to de-risk and eliminate as much objection handling as possible through your messaging and through your offer, so that there's the minimal amount of resistance possible, to the point where the best marketing message is one where it just makes sense to say yes, and there's more resistance around saying no to the offer.
I like that. That's really quite strong and powerful. Love that. So then your third point?
So the third mistake is using the right tool for the right campaign. So what that basically means is when I jump into a lot of ad accounts to do a bit of an audit, I noticed that most people tend to do traffic campaigns. Now, there's a purpose and a place for traffic campaigns, but if you're an e-commerce store, you should be running conversion or catalog sale campaigns. Being that you'll be paying. How conversion campaigns essentially work is, first of all, you need a pixel installed onto the website or the landing page, is that you're going, hey, Facebook, I want to place this ad in front of someone who's likely to take a certain conversion action. So that conversion action could be a purchase or add to cart. So what Facebook does is it goes, okay, I'm going to place this ad in front of people who have this interest, this interest, this interest, who in the past have proven that they've purchased something through Facebook. If your conversion objective was purchase. So straight away, you're going to have a big difference when you go from a traffic campaign where all you're doing is just delivering traffic, people just clicking on it, clickbait essentially type people towards your website with no intent. Whereas having a conversion campaign, there is intent behind it. The intent is it could be purchase, it could be add to carts or something along those lines. And then for people with lead generation, for businesses who need lead generation, conversion campaigns and lead generation forms are generally the two go-tos. Now, what I like to typically do when I first start working with with a business that needs lead generation is do some rapid fire testing. So before you go and build out this glorious funnel, spending all these hours and all this money on a funnel that may or may not work, you want to basically validate your offer and your messaging through lead generation forms. And what that is you can run an ad to an on-platform hosted form. So Facebook hosts are basically like put in your name, your number, your email address, and then they're a lead. If that validates itself in terms of like you're getting lots of leads come through, or you're getting a good cost per lead, or you're getting high quality leads, then you know that offer, that messaging, and that ad works. Now let's go and create a funnel where we can brand it and make it look a lot more aesthetically pleasing, and then go from that to conversion campaigns. And the conversion you'd be optimizing for the thank you page as a lead. You'd be optimizing the conversion campaign as a lead, and then you'll go from some success to even greater success, because then you have that intent conversion type of tool.
I like that. It to me then, if someone's being very, very specific with a campaign and a launch or something like that, then there needs to be, so you're sort of suggesting that they need to do this rapid fire test or this validation test before they then go and do the proper full launch, which means then they need to have an additional period of time or window of time before then they intend on doing the launch. What would be then, because there's so many people that don't do that really that I know of. So how much extra time do you think that they should allow for that before they're really doing the intentional launch?
It's a great question. And I think a lot of that comes down to the ad spend. If you have a very limited ad spend, you're going to need a longer period of time to validate your ad, your campaign, your messaging, and your offer. If ad spend is not so much of an issue, and in that case, you can run multiple campaigns at once, all with the different messaging, all with the different offers, and you can get that same data in a shorter period of time. So it really depends on the ad spend. Ideally, you want to spend at least $60 per ad per campaign. So if you have 3 different ads, so 3 different types of messaging under one campaign, which was one particular offer, you would need to spend $60 on each one of those 3 ads. And then from there, you can gain a bit of insight as to, okay, were people clicking on this, yes or no? Did it get generate a lot of leads? And you look at the soft stats like that, and then you start to identify if there's a bottleneck. So for argument's sake, if you've got 100 clicks onto the offer, then people are interested in the offer. But then if they don't follow through and they become a lead, it could be something as simple as the funnel's broken. When they click the submit button, nothing happens, and then So it could be something like that that's an issue as well. So ultimately, I think the answer to your question is the ad spend limitations determine how fast you can acquire that data before doing that launch.
Mm, mm. So would you say, look, on a general rule, to allow, if the ad spend, it's a little bit finite, but there's a little bit there, would you tend to recommend that there's an additional week or two? Or
as I mentioned before, it's approximately that $60 mark where you'll get a good amount of insight per ad as to which like style of copy works best for you, which one's generating intent, which one's generating clicks. If you're at the $50 mark and you've got like basically next to no clicks, then you obviously know that messaging or that offer isn't working. It's not grabbing people's attention. A lot of people get very intimately involved with their own offers that they think it's fantastic, but at the end of the day, the market determines what the market wants. Yeah. So that's a bonus little mistake as well. Just chucking that out there. So you always want to have your main offer. So for argument's sake, it could be a free trial. It could be a percentage off first purchase. It could be anything along those lines where it genuinely offers value to someone. And if that doesn't work, then always have at least one backup. I like to tend to have 3. So you'll have like the main one that you know will work, but if for whatever reason it doesn't, you've got 2 backups, and each offer should have 3 different styles of messaging. So you could have a story relatability type of messaging. One could be a direct type of messaging, and one could be an educating type of messaging. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And I also do know that if you're really sort of educating people, it takes that little bit longer. That is probably a little bit of a harder route, where it used to be, but perhaps more so these days, not so much, because there's more courses being released, and we're starting to see that more and more. Do you agree that that's been a trend, that the whole educating message is getting to be more effective?
It really comes down to the way you go back to number 2. The messaging is, if you can identify a problem to a cold audience and then educate them around it, then you'll be successful. Yeah. If you're trying to educate people on the solution or your product, then it's not really about them, it's about you. So you're going to really struggle to relate with that with that potential consumer.
Love it. Giving us so many great ideas and pearls of wisdom here. So, okay, so we're up to number 4 now. Is that right?
Yeah. I've got a little notepad in front of me to keep it in line. So number 4 is, often I see people not excluding their audiences. So we've gone through having your target audience as like a cold audience, and you're segmented a different demographic type of people. And then you'll do your rapid fire testing with your messaging between all of them, and you're going to identify a winning formula. So an offer, a style of messaging that best relates to those target segments. And now, once you've established the whole rapid fire testing and you start getting more involved with the top of funnel, middle of funnel, and bottom of funnel aspect of things, then what you need to do is exclude your audiences from each other. Something that I never see, literally maybe one person has ever done when I've gone through an audit, is they'll have the cold audience through interest, for argument's sake, interested in this, and they also interested in this. And then they have the middle of funnel, they're trying to retarget people who have been to their website, and then bottom of funnel, people who have been, middle of funnel is people who have interacted with their social media accounts, and then bottom of funnel are people who have been on their website. But if you don't exclude the website views and the social media views from your top of funnel with your cold audience, Facebook tends to like to pick the lowest hanging fruit, essentially. So if someone's interacted with your social media at one point, then Facebook will try to dip into that pool of people. What a lot of people don't do is separate. So in the top of funnel, they go, okay, I want to target this interest, and then exclude this custom audience, which is the people who have been to your website, and then also exclude a custom audience of people who have interacted with your socials as well. So just by doing that, you're going to definitely within a 99%, I'd like to say 100%, but 99% range, separate your audiences so your message is being delivered to the right person at each stage on that consumer decision-making process through the top of funnel, middle of funnel, and bottom of funnel.
Does that mean that people have to use a different ad, like they've got to redo the ad? Because the message would have changed.
Yeah, so you've got a top of funnel, at the bare minimum, you should have a top of funnel and bottom of funnel. So cold audience and retargeting campaign, like that's your minimum funnel sequence that you should be having at any point in time. A lot of people don't have that either. There's another bonus tip.
Yeah.
So your top of funnel needs to identify the problem and then offer some sort of solution as well. So that could be through an offer that gives value. So whether it be like free shipping, de-risk it by like with the ecom, afterpay or something like that. Or if you're a service-based business and you're trying to get lead generation, then maybe a discount, a coupon code or something like that for a first-time purchase, or even a second time. Like the more time someone purchases from you, the greater that loyalty is, and they'll become repeat customers as well. So on the top of funnel, you're going to be identifying more of the problem aspect, and then at the bottom of funnel, you're going to be talking more about the product. So you should never be running a top of funnel ad in a retargeting campaign. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Because it's completely different. Someone who doesn't know who you are, you need to talk about the problem and the solution. And then someone who does know who you are, you want to educate them more about the product and why that product will be right for them.
I know a lot of people that do that sort of top of funnel stuff, but as far as the middle and the bottom, not as an ad. Like they will, because once they've got the emails, that they do more email marketing. So what is the benefits of people still doing adverts for middle and bottom type? So if the customer has already had contact with, that end consumer has had contact with that business owner, what is the point of the business owner doing further ads that are more middle and bottom funnel, other than the fact that if the business owner hasn't collected emails?
I think the simplest answer would be on a psychology level, where people buy in familiarity. So if you're familiar with a certain brand or product, you're more likely to take action on that than start again with a different brand. That's the simplest answer I can give you. And the other one is also that it works. Like you get a higher return on ad spend or cheaper cost per lead when you start doing those retargeting campaigns.
Yeah.
If someone's interested in your product offer, etc., but then for whatever reason they didn't opt in, there are still a percentage of people who are genuinely interested, and then they might have got distracted. They could, for argument's sake, a lot of people scroll on the toilet, okay? So they might have gone, oh, this is a great ad. I've got this issue, click on it, and then gone, oh crap, I've got to get back to work, close it, and then it never comes back up again until you do that retargeting ad. So that's also the power in that, is that there could have been high intent, but they got caught off guard through time or some sort of distraction. It could be that they had to go get dinner ready, tend to the children or something like that.
And annoyed it, yes.
And then when they come back, the newsfeed refreshes and the ad's gone.
Yes, yeah.
So there could have been high intent people, and there is always a percentage, and it would be a lower percentage, but there's a percentage of people who had genuine intent with the top of funnel.
Gosh, the amount of times I've done that. So really, if I've not been able to refine them, then they're not doing retargeting. Is that right?
Yeah. So an example, I've got an ebook as well. An example that I've written in the ebook, it just came to mind now, is that if you were selling a product online, so e-commerce for argument's sake, and you spent $100 on a top of funnel campaign only, and you acquired, let's say, 1,000 website views and one person purchased. Okay, and that purchase was $100. So you made your money back, like you basically broke even minus the costs to actually acquire the goods if it's a physical product.
Yeah.
Okay, so you broke even on that with a 100% return or 1x return. If you were to do a retargeting ad simultaneously or just after doing that, what you are missing out on is the soft stats in between. So you've had 1,000 people who have gone to your website, but if you don't pay attention, you could have noticed 300 people viewed 3 different products and 100 people clicked add to cart. And out of that 100 people, 20 people initiated cart checkout. If you don't have that retargeting campaign to basically go, oh, hey, we noticed that you clicked add to cart essentially, for whatever reason, we know life gets in the way, you prompt them towards bringing them back and then completing the purchase. You've gone from spending $100, even if it was just a $20 retargeting campaign, $20 a day or something like that, just something super, super simple, right? You go from the $100, you've acquired all that data and all those people who have gone to your website, and although you've only made one purchase, if you do that retargeting campaign for the 20% of the overall budget, which would be $20, you're more likely to get those 20 people who have initiated checkout, a portion of them will complete the checkout. So now you've gone from $100 ad spend with a 100% return on ad spend, so you broke even, to now potentially, even if you got 10% of that 20 people who initiated checkout, would be 2 people, you've now gone from $100 in return on ad spend to now acquiring 3 sales at $100. You made $300 and you've spent $120. The difference is that. So it's important to generate data first and foremost before you even consider doing any retargeting. But the power in retargeting is that the intent. So if there's intent of people who have clicked on add to cart, there's a level of intent where people wanted it. And if you replace that ad in front of them to draw them back to complete that checkout, with that example, instead of spending $100 and acquiring $100, you could spend $120 and acquire $300. And that's working on terrible stats, like 10% conversion from a 20 people who have initiated checkout, right? And so just by leveraging that, you can go from $100 outcome to $300 outcome, and then you're profitable.
That's like, wow. So I'm sure a lot of people that are listening to that are going like, wow, okay, I hadn't really considered that. And it's very much along the message that I give is, if you're already doing something, find a way to leverage it and do it a whole lot more. So they're already doing the advertising, they're already collecting some of those stats. So they really just need to now look at how do they leverage on what they haven't been able to serve as far as the people being able to do that conversion, let alone the fact that if there's been a conversion, but if they want to be coming back and being repeat customers. So the golden rule of thumb for business is that it's better to look after customers that you've served and get them to be repeat customers, or that they refer people to you, than to go for a cold audience that don't know you at all. So I love that idea. I think that a lot of people need to then look at what is involved in retargeting and all of that. That's seriously awesome. There was a question I think I had. I think it's the right sort of question as far as then to be able to get to a point. Isn't there to retarget, as far as the data is concerned? Isn't there a threshold for a certain amount of people to be going through that sort of process? Your adverts, your funnel.
Threshold is probably not the word I'd use. I do understand your question though. So if you have today, you set up a website and you put on your pixel and you put up a top of funnel campaign where you're trying to essentially get traffic towards taking an action, and you get 1,000 views. Great. When you retarget, you only have 1,000 people to retarget. Now, if your CPM, so your cost per 1,000 is $10, it costs you $10 to reach 1,000 people. It doesn't matter if you put $100 onto retargeting, only $10 is going to get spent because you only have 1,000 people to reach. So the more the better. So there's not really like an answer to that. Like you're limited to the amount of data and traffic that you have. So if you're having 1,000 people a day go to your website, and then after a week you decided, let's start doing a retargeting campaign, then if that's 7 days, you've got 7,000 people to retarget.
Yeah.
That's a better size pool to get started with than, let's say, just 1,000. Anything less than 1,000, I would really, personally, realistically, I don't even consider doing a retargeting campaign for anyone who's a startup unless they've been advertising for at least 2 weeks on a reasonable ad spend level.
Right.
Reasonable being like around that $40, $50 a day for 2 weeks.
Right. Okay. Very interesting. Very interesting. I'm getting all these visuals. I'm seeing now the top of the funnel really has to be extremely quite wide so that you do get traffic happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. So I think we're up to number 5.
Correct. So yeah, just round off that 4th one because we've got a little bit off.
Sorry about that. I love to ask these questions.
Audiences. So when you're doing your top of funnel, you want to make sure that you're excluding your middle and bottom of funnel audiences. Regardless who's in there, you can just have a holistic custom audience of people who have interacted with your social media feed, which includes your ads, and then people who have interacted with this particular website. It will dynamically update as time goes on, so you don't need to keep redoing that, but just have that there in the first place so that you make sure that the top of funnel campaign is always targeting cold audiences. And the 5th one, so that's the roundup that. And the 5th one is a lot of people don't use lookalike audiences. Do you know what a lookalike audience is?
I do, but perhaps let's explain it for the listeners.
Okay, so a lookalike audience is, it's easier if I explain what a custom audience is. So on Facebook, what you can do is you can create, let's say that you're a service-based business and you've got 1,000 leads, let's say you have 1,000 high-quality leads over the last, I don't know, year or two. And from that, you want to start targeting people who are just like those people. You would upload those 1,000 leads into a custom audience on Facebook, and then you would create a lookalike audience of those people. And what that lookalike audience means is you can go from 1 to 10% similarity to that custom audience. So if you have 1,000 leads, 1,000 quality leads over like the last year or two, and you put that into a custom audience and then created a lookalike audience, what you're basically saying is, hey, Facebook, I want you to create an audience based on this audience that I've uploaded with a 1% similarity. What Facebook's then going to do is go, okay, let's find the similarities between these 1,000 people. And it could be a certain age, like this is where the algorithm takes over and you don't have to think about it literally ever.
Thank goodness, yeah.
But in a nutshell, what the algorithm's trying to identify is like, is there a gender bias in there? So like, for argument's sake, are they all male? Facebook will pick up on that. If it's relatively split, it won't care about the gender. Is there a specific type of age demographic in there? Do these people have similar jobs? Do these people make similar income? Do these people have different interaction rates with Facebook in general? Have these people made purchases in the past on Facebook? What's their average order value when they purchase something on Facebook? Like Facebook just takes care of all that through the algorithm. And so it'll spit out literally 150,000 people in Australia, at least. It's more if it's in the US.
Yes.
For each 1% for a lookalike audience that are exactly the same as your custom audience.
Wow.
So you can effectively, if you have that data, it's a lot easier to get started with Facebook advertising because you have 1,000 quality leads, upload that and then go, I want to put my ad in front of 150,000 people that are exactly the same as that 1,000 people. It's a lot easier to do that and you bypass a lot of that testing as opposed to having to go back through being specific with your target audience segmentation and then trying to figure out who your target audience is.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody does it. Well, a lot of people do, but a lot of people who need help don't do it and they don't understand what it is or how to do it. So
yeah, I think it's probably because of the whole understanding of it and the power and the leverageability of it. That's really quite amazing with what you've already said. Sorry, I cut you off. Continue.
No, either either. So on a lead generation value, if I've already covered that. So you can place an ad in front of 150,000 people that are exactly the same as those 1,000 high quality leads. You're going to be placing your ads essentially in front of the right audience without having to stress too much about that target segmentation. On an e-commerce level, what you can also do is create a value-based custom audience. So if your pixel is on your e-commerce site and it's tracking every single purchase that comes through, and you've had 1,000, let's say you've had 1,000 purchases on your website over the last month, year, whatever, and then you want to create a lookalike value-based audience of this, what Facebook's going to do is take it one step further. It's going to identify the average order value that is created. So let's say your average order value is $100. What Facebook's going to do is not only try to place your ad in front of 150,000 people that are exactly the same as your previous customers, but it's also going to try and do that with people who have on average made purchases at that price range.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just going to place your ad in front of someone who only ever spends $50. I mean, it can and it will at some point, but it's going to try to specifically, if your average order value is $100, it's going to play, the algorithm is going to know who spends $100, and then it's going to place your ads in front of those people. So the power in that is huge. Like, you can essentially bypass a lot of testing just by using a lookalike audience, and a lot of people aren't doing that at all.
That's amazing. That really, really is amazing. That's incredible leverage, really. And it's worthwhile doing the testing then. You know, it's worthwhile then for a lot of people with all of these steps that you've given us. It's worthwhile people to really follow suit with everything. Give that a little bit more of a buffer of time before they actually do a launch, so that they can do that rapid fire testing, like you said, and the validating. So then you're creating a whole lot more of, as you said, that soft data. So then they can do a whole lot more retargeting and lookalike audiences. And ultimately then it just is making, each time they're going off and doing a campaign, they're making their job and their life easier. It's just putting in a bit of effort in the first place. That's really quite amazing. That's fantastic power and information that you've brought us, which is seriously, whoa, it's almost like a drop the mic sort of thing, I think, for a lot of people that are just sort of not 100% across it. And we know that Facebook changes quite regularly. So I think that there's also the confidence level and really knowing what to do and how to do. So obviously to find someone like yourself who's a specialist in it is seriously awesome. So then, do you provide done for you services as well as training around this or anything like that?
Yeah, so ultimately our main focus is a done for you service, where we essentially work with you, and we go back to mistake number one. We identify your target segment audiences, and then from there we'll start to create the messaging tonality, so the style of messaging, how you're getting that message across, and etc. And then also creating like the images, working with you to create some images to essentially make the ads. And then with target market research, also being able to implement lookalike audiences, which we've just talked about, identifying the general interests and demographics of who your potential consumers are, and then also targeting people who are interested in your competitors. So there's something that was another little bonus for you. Next to no one ever targets people who have a relative interest in their competitors. So if you are a removalist company and you want to target people, and there's another really famous removalist company, then you can target an interest of that particular company, and everyone who likes that is going to be somewhat relevant to you as well. So also doing that, and essentially, yeah, it's completely done for you type of product. And we also do offer, so that's a relatively high end. It's not cheap. It's a reasonable amount, But for people who just want to get started, we also offer a DIY package as well. So we essentially create all that I've just mentioned, but then we give it to you and allow you to implement it. And then, well, you're kind of on your own from there. That's why it's DIY. But also helping the underdog to get ahead as well. So creating those ads, doing that market research to identify who you need to target and setting up those audiences essentially, and then going, here you go, you can implement it. But if you're a serious business who doesn't have the time or day to do this, and you need a professional to take over and then scale it to become profitable, or if it's lead generation, obviously never having to worry about leads again, then that's where the done for you service comes in play.
Love that. Love that. That sounds really awesome. I think there'll be a lot of people, especially there's a well, not just our market, our audience, being that they're all over the demographics there as far as how experienced they are. But I do know that at the moment, the statistics for entrepreneurship with a lot of people, there's a lot more people getting into startups at the moment. So, and it can be quite daunting. So I like the idea that you've almost got like those a step through process. They can get started doing it themselves and get familiar. So it's always really important to get to know what goes on in your business. And when they get to a point where they can sort of hand it over and say, right, now scale my business.
Absolutely.
Please do all the hard yakka, because I don't want to do it. I want those.
That's exactly how I've set it up in terms of the business. Is that I love helping everyone, and unfortunately the done for you service can't help everyone. People need to be at a certain threshold and affordability around a certain amount of ad spend to successfully get ahead with Facebook ads. But if you're not at that stage, I still want to help you. I'll create everything for you and then give it to you as a DIY type of package.
Love it. Love it. And as you can hear, listeners,
it sounds where you can hand over, and then you can hand it over.
Yeah, true. and it sounds like you really know your stuff. So that's the most important thing. Well, you are a specialist in it, which is beautiful. I must ask then, what is on the horizon for you then in 2021?
Oh, I thought you were going to say 2020. I was going to say to get through 2020 after this pandemic.
Oh, look, 2020 was just around the corner. So let's focus on that.
Yeah. Essentially just hiring more media buyers. Good media buyers are really hard to come by. It's one thing for obviously the listeners to hire someone who knows what they're doing, but for me to hire someone that knows what they're doing is also a bit of a process to find someone who can holistically do everything and is good at it as well. And then obviously onboarding and scaling the company.
Yeah, nice. Oh, look, we look forward to seeing how that all happens for you. And yeah, keep us informed. So then do you have an offer for the listeners?
If you're interested in a free consultation, then you can jump on my website, and in the first section, you'll be able to be directed to the appropriate place. So there's, if you're on the website on desktop, then there'll be 2 columns at the top. One will be for lead generation, one will be for e-commerce. If you're on phone, just scroll down a tiny bit. And then it will take you to the appropriate place where you can go through a form, fill out your details, select a time, and then have that consultation with me. And I can essentially audit your ad account, figure out what you're doing right and wrong, point you in the right direction. And if we're a good fit, we can potentially work together. And if we're not a good fit, then I can at least point you in the right direction with the DIY package.
I like
and that website is active8social.com, and 8 is the number 8.
Active 8 is the number, social. So active is the word, 8 is the number, and social is the word. .com. I like that. And of course, the listeners do know that they can find your details on the website where I house this interview on soniaclark.com/episode. And they have to find you, Johnathon Clark. Look, I thank you so much for your time and for your fabulous information. I think this is really going to be quite eye-opening for a lot of people, and even for those that have been quite experienced, they've got a well-established business and they want to grow and scale, even so that they know that there's someone like yourself that has really good information and knows their stuff and can help take them to the next level, which is brilliant. Beautiful. Thank you so much. Before we just do a quick sign off, is there any last minute thing you might want to say?
No.
We've talked a lot.
I've given extra bonus mistakes as well. It's not really too much more I wanted to add into that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a pleasure, and thank you very much for your time also.
Oh, look, I thank you too. So have yourself a lovely day, and thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.